The University API Gateway Service provides a mechanism for those developing API services to publish their APIs so that anyone in the university can make use of them. API is an initialism which stands for Application Programmer's Interface, and is a term used to describe a mechanism whereby one service can request information from or perform an action within another service without requiring manual intervention. By publish, we mean that the API gateway will provide a single place for users to browse the documentation of your API and request that their application be able to make use of that API. Engineers within UIS DevOps are currently developing the service. If you need to contact them, use the GitLab project for the API gateway. Technically, the API gateway is implemented by proxying your API. Users of your API send a request to api.apps.cam.act.uk, which is translated by the API gateway and passed to your backend implementation. The API gateway handles authentication, rate limiting, quota enforcement and abuse detection and mitigation of that abuse. Your backend can be very thin and simply act on the requests which the gateway passes to it. The API gateway service is currently moving from the discovery phase to the alpha phase, and we're on the lookout for people to try out our documentation, implement backends, and see what holes we have in our publication workflow. Technical documentation is available on developer.api.apps.cam.ac.uk, and that's where we suggest people start looking at the service. Now here I am on the developer portal at developer.api.apps.cam.ac.uk. In the portal, I can look at documentation for those wanting to use APIs and documentation for those wanting to publish them. If I open the API catalogue, I can see which APIs are available. This is the list of public APIs. Some APIs can only be seen once you're signed in. To sign in, I click the Sign In button and log in with SAML, which takes me to Raven. I can then look at the API catalogue and see any sensitive APIs. Sensitive APIs are those that require manual approval from the team running the service before an application can make use of them. Let's look at the Raven Statistics API. This API lets you get up-to-date statistics on which devices are using Raven. Each API in the API gateway comes with documentation on how the API works, what it does, and what responses it can return. The documentation is interactive. You can try out the API directly in your browser. To do so, click on the endpoint of interest to you, review the documentation, and click Execute. The response is shown directly in the documentation. The majority of APIs require some form of authentication. In the API gateway, this is done on a per application basis. Anyone in the university can register an application. Applications can be owned by teams, which is our recommended approach, or by individuals for the purposes of experimentation. Here you can see that I'm a member of a team. I also have a personal experimentation application which I have created. This is the application page. Owners of an application can create credentials for that application. These credentials can be periodically rotated. You can see which APIs are enabled for this application here. APIs with a padlock icon are those that require manual approval. I can make use of my application credentials directly within the API documentation. If I go to the card API and try to make a request, it is initially unauthorized and forbidden. I can authorize my browser by providing client credentials. These can be taken from the application page. I copy the client ID and secret here, and then paste them here. My browser now has a time-limited authentication token. This token lasts for around an hour, but can be refreshed if necessary. Repeating the query shows it succeeds and displays the response in the browser. The Raven Statistics API is currently being used on the Technical Design Authority site to provide real-time statistics of end-user devices using Raven. We're making use of the Card API, along with the already mature Lookup API, to replace the CSV feeds used by various card officers around the university. We've written a utility which can output CSVs of the correct format, but institutions are free to write their own utilities to interface with the new APIs. What we need now is for a couple of people within UIS to try developing backend services according to the documentation on the portal. This lets us shake out any bugs in our documentation before offering the service more widely. The documentation which exists is intended for those directly involved in the implementation of the backend and is technical in nature. If you want to discuss the API Gateway service, initial contact should always be done through the GitLab project.